Welcome to Heart Speak Podcast, episode 90. Remember to remember. Wow, she's already a little bit confused. But truly, we are in an amazing time. I know I always say this, but it's an amazing time where we need to keep our feet on the ground, connect to the moon as we've been doing, or to the stars, and connect to your heart. And I could just finish there. But I'm wanting to say this is a time where you could say the winds of change are very strong. And maybe I could put winds and fire and water all together in sense of we've got mists swirling around us. It's quite hard to know which way is up. But I know that each of you have found a way of doing that. Stay present, stay in the now. Sometimes don't listen to too much news or too much internet, apart from me, but to recognize that everything is swirling around us. And it's our choice as to what we choose to focus on. And what I would suggest to you, you focus on those things that are close to your heart, that resonate with you, and you let go of those things that don't. Now, there is so much going on. I think I'm going to describe the astrology first, and then I'll come back to some of those things, or they will come into the astrology. So, Neptune in Pisces. Neptune has just turned retrograde. And the message I received from my guidance was, nothing is as it seems. That doesn't mean, how can I say, it is that, but it's also this, and it's also this, and it's also this. And that's why I'm suggesting that we stay in touch with our hearts. And what resonates with us is what we choose from this array of possibilities of the truth. And I've seen this before where when something, we could say something bad happens. Something bad happens in our own lives. And we call it a crisis, a chaos, a disaster. But only afterwards do we see, wow, if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm not suggesting we have to have crises in order to have change, but that's sometimes how it happens. And I put that down to my own stubbornness to let go of things. Sometimes I need something to break me away from patterns that I insist in holding on to because they seem so important to me. I wonder if any of you relate to that. So at this time, Neptune, which is mystery, and Pisces, which is unlimitedness, also are shown. So we're moving into mystery, we're moving into unlimitedness, we're moving into our multidimensional selves. When Neptune moved into Pisces back in 2011, it was really the start of all the video games, or an increase on that. And I again heard from my guides that the virtual reality is really going to be the future. And that's what we're seeing. So that creating a virtual reality on a video game or in any other way is, how do we create our reality? Now, none of you are surprised to hear when you've listened to my podcast to say, but Christine, we already create our reality. Absolutely. Now we're being given opportunity through different games and different ways to literally use our intention to create reality, or to a better way of saying it is to be more conscious to the creations that we're creating. Of course, that takes a lot of energy because we might play a game and then we go back to being unconscious again. So this is a time, that's why I said remember to remember. It's remembering that you and I are creators of our reality. Everything we do is a mirror of our thinking, our emotions, our belief systems. As we would all want to do, we want to make sure we create from the purest of our intentions, and that would be where I'm talking about listening to your soul, listening to your intuition. But it doesn't mean that when we listen to our soul, when we create from our soul, that we won't create chaos in our lives. Again, it's our perception that that chaos is bad, but perhaps in the future we'll say, wow, again, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. I'm sure you've all had experiences like that. I certainly have. Things that I felt were the end of my world became the beginning of an amazing cycle. The caterpillar recognizing that maybe the end isn't there when it moves into the cocoon, that it's really just doing that so it can become a butterfly. All right. So Neptune in Pisces is literally the veils falling between what we call our reality and what we perceive, our thinking and our reality. In other words, you think it and it happens. And we might call that synchronicity. And we always say, oh, isn't it wonderful? You know, I was thinking of you and you called me. But when I'm thinking of that person and damn it, they turned up. I'm sure you've never thought that. But whatever we're thinking is what we're creating instantaneously. And what I understand from the spirit world is that is exactly how we create reality when we do not have a physical body, an emotional body, a mental body. Literally, we think it, we're there. So with Neptune in Pisces, we are dissolving. Neptune is also the dissolver. We're dissolving anything that keeps us separate from a unity consciousness, or keeps us separate from our soul's consciousness or divine consciousness, whatever word you want. So as this is happening, and as what you might be saying, well, why are you talking about Neptune in Pisces retrograde? It's becoming much more difficult sometimes to know exactly from where are we creating and what is created. So as I see Neptune in Pisces going backwards, retrograde, and it will do this until the end of November, what we're seeing is it's almost like everything we've ever believed, everything we've ever created is coming back to us. Whoopee! It's literally that we may not even have to think it. It's our soul is saying, time to clear anything that is stopping me having a unified experience with myself or a unified experience with everybody else. And so I feel that Neptune in Pisces retrograde is, how can I put it? It's like, I'm seeing like a storm. It's almost like everything that's laying on the floor, everything that like the sand or the dust that's laying on the top of the planet is being whipped up. And we might be saying, I don't know which way's up. I don't know how to do this. But it's almost being whipped up so that we own what is ours and let go of what isn't. And when we own the dust that is ours, in other words, we remember ourselves, we say, oh, I created that, then we literally are owning it, taking it to our heart, and we are clearing the earth of all the dust and other things that we have laid down on the surface of this earth. So let me just clarify. I know this is a lot to put into one sentence. Neptune in Pisces is helping us to recognize that we are creators of our reality and that we are spirit and we can do that. And so that it's saying, remember, you can do this. But it's also, as it goes retrograde, saying to us, but remember, there are things you created that you didn't like, you didn't want to possess, you didn't want to own. So Chris, they're coming home to you. So it's literally, it's almost, as I say, it's almost like a dust storm, but it's all coming into your home. It's coming into our home to say, own what is yours, let go of what isn't. And this is the definition of karma. Karma is taking something that doesn't belong to you. And what unity consciousness means is completing karma. In other words, we cannot experience that unity consciousness while we're stuck in some other time zone or other past life or etc., where we are still caught up in the karma of that experience. So this is a time for clearing karma. Now, clearing karma has got nothing to do with other people. I shouldn't say it that way. But being a good person or serving other people is almost doing it but not realizing why you're doing it. So if truly your karma is, I need to go and help other people, and you know that to be true, then you're clearing karma. But there's almost been a false sense of, oh, be a nice person, don't do anything wrong, and that will clear your karma. That isn't what clears karma, necessarily. Clearing karma is owning you, your parts, owning who you are, letting go of what you're not. So the first piece is, who am I? So remember, I'm always talking about my petals and owning and opening all my petals. So if I have a memory, let's just leave it in this life. If I can still remember a time in this life where there's energy still involved, in other words, I can say, oh yes, it was 6 years ago and that's happened to me, and I have not owned that karma as yet. I haven't completed it. So whatever you have a memory of, where there's energy, emotion involved still, go back into that memory, meet the part of you that created that memory. Again, it's not blame, not shame. You're just saying, as a mighty being, I created this experience, but I clearly have not as yet understood why I created it. So what I'm doing is I'm going back 6 years and I'm saying, okay, there was that memory, it's still got energy in it. I'm going to take from that memory maybe gems of wisdom or something that I learned about myself, or saying, I will never let anybody do that to me again, or I own that part of me that, if I may say, invested into that experience. What was my part in this? It wasn't just done to me. And when I do that and I say, yeah, I probably, it wasn't the wisest thing I did, or yes, I was playing a game with someone and maybe it didn't work out the way I wanted. Now, again, you might say, well, that sounds like blame and shame. No, it's not. It's saying I am accountable for my part in that memory. Accountability is everything at this moment. Accountability is not blame and shame. It is just say, I will own that part, my part in that experience. And instead of us trying to make it pretty or saying, well, I mean, I was persuaded to do that, it wasn't my fault. That's what we keep doing. We keep looking for an excuse, if I may say. I don't care. Once we just say, yeah, I turned up into that experience, I'll take it. I'll be accountable for that. Again, it's not blaming or shaming. It's not saying you caused this to happen. All we're saying is I took part in that. Once we do that, we then can make choices to do things differently. But unless we play our part of saying, yeah, I turned up, we can't make any changes. Does that make sense? So I see so often we want to find a reason. Well, I was having a bad day, or, well, I thought they loved me, but they did. Forget the excuses. And you might say, they're not excuses, they're truths. They are, but when we're trying to justify ourselves or find a reason for it, we're already moving away from the actual experience. All of that may be true. All of it may be true. But all we can do is I choose not to do that again because I am owning that part. And that is the remembering I'm suggesting. I hope that's clear. And when you do say, yeah, I'll take ownership of that, you take that to your heart, you say, I accept that into my heart, and one of your petals is fully open. Sometimes, and I believe very much in therapy, But sometimes we go to therapy to find out how can we justify what we did. Sometimes the only way we really remember is when we feel. How did you feel in that situation? What was the deepest feeling you had? Or what was the deepest feeling you were left with? Does that make sense? So the same is true of past lives. If you want to go back into past lives or you have past life memories, remember, it's not about whether you died in that past life, because you did, because otherwise you wouldn't be here now. But what was almost the memory that you died with? And what the Buddhists would say, it's those memories, it's those last 3 minutes, it's that last minute, that memory you died with, that then becomes karma for the next life. So that's why they say, die well, die well, die clear. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't have to be your death. It can be in this life, you know, when you part from a relationship, or you leave a job, or you divorce, or anything. It's how did you leave that? Did you leave it well? Or was there an energy that's still hanging out there? And we may say, well, it's their problem. No, it's not. In other words, if we continually look for someone else to gain forgiveness, or to ask for our forgiveness, then we're getting involved with their karma. That's got nothing to do with you, nothing to do with me. So what we want to do is to complete things. We want to say, this is my completion on this. Now, it doesn't have to be a completion of a relationship, but it is a completion of the game that you and I play at the solar plexus. So solar plexus is often about win, lose, judge, shame, criticize. So whatever's going on there, it's like cutting that tie. Now, let me come back to my Neptune Pisces retrograde. I'm saying there's never been a time where there's more of us being whipped up so we can remember who we are. So rather than, again, looking outside in the world and say the world is like that, synchronicities are happening so commonly now. So whether those synchronicities come to you, in other words, meeting yourself, mirrors, whether those mirrors are appearing in your dream state, as they've done with me recently, or they've come in as animals or birds, everything that's happening is, here we are, remember this, remember this. It might be someone you meet in a street, it might be a conversation you hear. Anything that's happening, you and I are calling in parts of ourselves that we created, but we haven't yet owned. We dispossess them, and they may well be parts even of this life. As I say, it might be your little girl or little boy. You said, I can't handle you now, go away. Or it may be a part of your own inner critic, etc. How does that work? All right. So this is the remembering that Neptune in Pisces is happening. But at the same time, what's happening is it's almost like we need to be very mindful not to get lost in someone else's rabbit warren, because there's so many things flying around, and so much, if I may say, misinformation. And I'm not saying it's necessarily, let me say, obvious or being done consciously, but it's almost like we're all looking at things with a different lens. So someone takes a picture and we go, oh, that's what it means. But actually, if we stand to the left or the right, we see it differently. So what I'm recognizing when I'm studying all the COVID information, it really depends on where you're looking and what, in many ways, we all want out of the information that we're getting. All right. So, again, try to put aside any polarization. You might be this supporter or that supporter. Remember, all of that's biased. So to be able to see things outside the bias of polarity, which doesn't help us at all. In other words, polarization is the way of making sure we never see who we truly are. we are breaking down those separations and saying, I am this and I'm this. So if I look at someone like, is sugar bad for you? And I happen to be the researcher who is from the sugar company, then guess what? I'm going to see sugar is not bad for you. But if I'm the dental association who thinks sugar's bad for the teeth, guess what? I'm going to see that sugar is bad for you. And that's how research has worked all the time. And those of you who understand quantum physics and the Heisenberg's theory of uncertainty, this is what's playing out now. So Heisenberg's theory of uncertainty said at the level of the subatomic level, the viewpoint, the intention of the viewer greatly influences the result. At the subatomic level, our intention, our belief systems greatly influence the result. In other words, what we see is dependent on what we believe. And to be able to see clearly in this time of so much swirling mist and sand, again, root yourself, keep connected to the sky, listen to your heart. And recognize it isn't to mean don't do something, but is what's happening in the world today, and I might be getting emotionally caught up in it. Recognize it's not to say, oh, don't get emotionally caught up. It may well be that you and I are getting caught into something because there's a part of me that I need to remember. That makes sense? So if I have an emotional reaction to something, recognize it's a part of me still waiting to be integrated. Phew, it's a lot going on. But what we're doing together collectively is clearing the dust, the emotional dust, the astral dust from the surface of this earth. That, you know, when we've talked about, wow, look, humans haven't been out in the, you know, in the air or on the, so everything's looking cleaner. The cleaning is only on the surface. Now we have to clean up the emotional dust, the emotional rubbish that we've put onto the earth. And we're clearing the mental, which is even harder, the belief systems. And there at a deeper level, again, Heisenberg's theory of uncertainty means our beliefs are driving our reality. And so when we do get emotionally caught into something, it's really saying, look at your beliefs, look at your beliefs. What is it that's being triggered at this time? And how do you change that belief? We don't change it by just having better affirmations. I'm a nice person, I'm a nice person. It's changing it within your body or within your spiritual world. Okay, so that's the Neptune retrograde. Really important time. We're clearing the soil, and a lot of confusion. Again, pay attention to the fact there are so many different opinions or ways of looking at one thing. And all of them are right, and all of them have a purpose, I believe, in creating our unity consciousness. Same time, this weekend, 30th of June, Pluto and Jupiter coming together. This has been happening for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Really big. Jupiter is expansion, Pluto is depth. You could say Jupiter is more fiery, but they're both got a different type of fire. Pluto is a very deep volcanic fire, dragon fire. So what I'm seeing is everything's being brought to the surface. Again, everything's being brought to the surface so we can see it. Exposure, that's what I want, exposure of the secrets. But it's also exposing my secrets. It's exposing what I keep secret. So this is, again, coming to the surface. So we're seeing Black Lives Matter, we're seeing the key points around slavery, but it's what it's allowing us to see is a much deeper woundedness. And again, wound meaning separation. How have we separated ourselves? How did we get to this place? And yes, individuals or tribes or cultures have been victimized more than others, but it goes way, way back, my friends. And as we clear the surface, we start going back into those other times of both being a slave, a victim, and also being a victimizer and a slave owner. We've all done it. I mean, what does it mean to be a slave? It means to take away someone's power, take away someone's control, take away someone's opportunities. So people are doing that now. It's called bullying. A bully, someone who threatens someone else, takes away their livelihood, this is happening. And I'm very keen that we should deal with the present day slaves, those who have no voice, those who are being trafficked, for instance, those people living in homes where they don't feel safe, those people going into jobs where they don't feel fulfilled and they don't feel they can let go of them. And you might say, oh, that's nothing to do with what's happened in the past. Everything is. And again, in a roundabout way with this Neptune Pisces, we're seeing a slavery or giving up of power for the sake of what we're told is freedom and safety. So you might say, oh no, we're being looked after. We're going to have a vaccine. We're going to all stay at home. We're going to wear masks. But we're becoming slave to someone else's belief system. And again, you can question me and say, well, no, it's coronavirus. Well, it may be. But at what point do we say, I would rather develop the COVID and move into whatever issues may be than feel that I can't get out of my own home, I can't work, I can't hug my children, etc., or my grandchildren. So the slavery is subtle, but it's still there. And so this enslavement, it sometimes is done through threats and fear. If you don't do this, I will kill you. And sometimes almost with a outside enemy that we're being protected by, protected against. We love you, we're going to take care of you because this outside mystery that you don't know is really going to affect you. So please, everybody, I'm asking that where do we need to look at? Where have I lost my, what does it mean to be a slave for each of us? I'm just using some words. And where have I given away my power? And this takes me back to the fact we're still in the Piscean Age and will be for maybe even 90 odd years. And the Piscean Age was meant to be two fish swimming in opposite directions, joined by a common band, the sacred marriage of opposites, where we saw the opposites, we married them, we involved ourselves in the duality, and we became free. And what's really happened is that we've had polarization instead of the sacred marriage. I am another one of you is the sacred marriage. I am separate from you, and if you're not with me, you're against me, is the polarization. And we are at this point of needing to meet those parts of ourselves that are the opposites, those parts of us that we may have projected out, and recognizing that this is the healing. This is where we are moving towards. So the Piscean Age, which is, again, coming to a close in maybe 100 years, but it is about healing the separations that have occurred. Healing where we are still carrying that degree of separation. And that degree of separation, you may have noticed, has occurred also within COVID or in any of the protests that are happening. You're with us or you're against us. You care for me or you don't. This is not going to work. This is not the way we want to move forward. And soon Saturn will go back into Aquarius, Pluto will go into Aquarius, which is all about self-accountability, self-responsibility, self-respect. That's the future. The future is creating communities that move us in that direction. And community awareness is where we need to be coming from now. So the question I ask at the end of all of that is, why did we ever give our power away? Because that's what's happened in the Piscean Age. We've almost said, I will give you my power as long as you make me safe. I will give you my power as long as you make me elite. I will give you my power as long as you make me. In other words, we, again, prostituted ourselves for something. So taking back our power, taking it back means accountability. Accountability for my life. COVID can't kill me. I can make that choice. Something outside me cannot make a decision for me if I'm willing to be accountable for it. I make those choices. I make a choice. My soul makes those choices, not somebody else. I may interact with something or someone that I have chosen to bring into my life to cause something to happen, but it's not the other person that did it to me. I know this is very deep today, and I hope I'm not going to a place where where I've lost you. I hope you're still with me on this. So I want to just finish with this. We did 2 meditations that I did recently with you. One was to imagine yourself in the starship and seeing almost a needle or an arrow above the petals. And I wonder what happened to you when you looked and saw where the needle was or the arrow was. And I wonder whether your arrow has moved to another place. Mine did. Mine certainly moved to a place where I recognized that I was not paying attention to this one petal. And that the solstice and the solar eclipse that we've recently had certainly opened that up. The second, or the meditation we just did, was imagining a liquid crystal mirror and meeting someone from the spirit world through that. And it's a question of whether or not you wish to go further back into this, but I would use that same meditation because my final piece of the remembering is that every time we've had a shift in humanity's consciousness or a shift in civilization, the previous civilization or culture has been suppressed and has been seen as negative. It's often been seen as dark or pagan or crazy. And we have all had experiences of being suppressed or seen as crazy, etc. And I love going around different sacred sites because I see how the mythology has changed according to the people's living on that sacred site. In other words, I might go to a sacred site where one of the great goddesses, I have to say, that was older than 3,500 years, honored that great goddess as a great goddess. But what happened, because a new awareness came in, that particular site, temple, became honored to, let's say, Diana, and then maybe to Mary, depending on which particular goddess was acknowledged at that time. And what I understand, and here I'm trying to stay equipped, is that, let's say, an area of land, might be a land that you know, but I might call it a sacred site. I might call it my own backyard or garden. That particular space has always been there, but that different cultures and different tribes have laid their energy on top, so that we are now clearing the surface because we're taking back on board what is ours. But as we do, we are getting in touch with deeper mythologies that are part of our remembering. So that it may well be that you say, well, this is a past life. Well, it may be a past life, but it's also a deeper mythology, a deeper belief system. And as you and I take ownership of that, we go deeper and deeper. So what is Jupiter and Pluto doing? Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn is allowing us to see the structures of mythology that have been built on top of each other. And as we live on a certain area, when we live in a garden or whatever, we are being influenced by the different layers that exist in that one space. Does this make sense? So I'll tell you just a quick story that I used to live on the River Thames. And I asked someone to come in to have a look at my land. It was like a feng shui. And this person said to me, well, there's a group of beings from many thousands of years back who are still coming to this place on the Thames to do a ceremony around these sacred trees. But your house has been built on that place. And they're a little worried, or they want to know who you are and will you allow them to come and worship that tree at a certain time on where I lived. So this may be blowing your mind, but understand that a piece of land or an area on this earth has several different mythologies happening all at one time. Blows my mind. So I said, oh, please let them do their ceremony. Now, they knew I existed, and yes, I became aware of their existence, but it was almost as if they were saying, oh, they built a house, or she's just moved into our land. And any of you who may have come across a wonderful photographer called Harry Oldfield, who did wonderful work with creating camera lenses that could actually pick up the different layers of mythology in one area. Amazing. And the fascinating thing is that they're all existing at the same time. So he would pick up Roman soldiers walking along a road, but at the same time he would pick up, I don't know, 15th century people walking along that road. And then they'd pick up tourists walking along that road. You see, the land, we've all existed on the land, but at different times. Now, I am blowing your minds, but what I'm asking us all to recognize is that as we're clearing the earth, we're getting deeper and deeper into the mythology that we are being influenced by in certain areas of the world. That ties me into what I'm going to be working on during the next few months, is what we call Earth Mysteries, which is really looking at the depth of what is a certain site. What is the essence of a certain site, even though different mythologies, different groups have used it for a different reason? I feel excited. I hope you do. And you may have read just recently, I put this up on Facebook, but indeed in Stonehenge, they've just found a whole lot of shafts that are very deep shafts. Again, part of the so-called Stonehenge plateau or on Salisbury Plain. But the idea of Stonehenge and the whole idea is much bigger than we originally thought. And that's true of so many of these sacred sites. Literally, things were layered and layered and layered and layered. So what I'm coming back to, and I complete with this, is we also are layered. Again, if we can try not to call it past lives, it's almost the layering of one petal has many different layers to it, like a rose. So I could look at a petal, but the same aspect of me was present in all those layers. And what I would suggest is you go back to the meditation with a liquid crystal and you ask to see a piece of you and how it has existed through the different ages. I still have to use the word ages, but mythologies, if you would ask, if you would maybe change it to that. And what parts of me and you have been buried and suppressed by the layers that went on top. And it isn't to get angry at the suppression that took place. It's much more of saying, hey, I existed before that suppression. Let me own that. Yes, you've been called, I don't know, witch, pagan, didn't matter, to forget the names. Who were you, or who are you beyond the story, if I may say that? What essence is in that particular part of you that we're going to pay attention to when we look in the mirror? Does that make sense? So it can, I know it sounds strange, but it could just be your nose. And you're saying, okay, show me my nose in this particular setting or space. in many mythologies. And as I've described before, it's how I see and work with people when I'm talking them in the soul reading, is I focus on the piece and then I see all the lives that appear around this one particular aspect of this individual. So finally, I'll just say, find the parts of us that are in the dark. Because those parts that are in the dark, Pluto, Jupiter, are now wanting to be owned. And as we go deeper into our mythology, almost the superficial levels, it's not to say we don't need those, but I perceive that the deeper we go, the more multidimensional we become. Stay on this earth because this earth is where we're having an existence. So I'm not wanting you to fly off around space. Just take one part of you in one part of the earth, wherever you want to be, and allow yourself to expand and expand deeper and deeper and deeper, and remembering who you are. Please don't get caught up in the fact that you were suppressed or you were killed. Who are you? Who are you that is multidimensional now, living in one space, many mythologies, bringing that home? Time to remember. Many blessings until next time. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening to the HeartSpeak podcast with Dr. Christine Page. Please check out all HeartSpeak episodes in the podcast archive section on www.christinepage.com. HeartSpeak is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Sticher Radio, and now playing on iHeart Radio. You can also watch the archive podcasts on YouTube. Connect with Christine on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, including her newest Facebook group, The Great Mother Calling. Do share with family, friends, colleagues. Join us next time for another edition of HeartSpeak.